Good morning. Dr. Dennis, I appreciate your words. He could have left out the part about his friend dying of a heart attack in the pulpit, kind of bringing out my darkest fear. At least he has a little experience here. Growing up during the Second World War and having a father and a grandfather that had served in World War I shaped his thinking all of his life. Some knew him as Harry, most knew him as Dr. Suggs, and some by Uncle Harry, but to the two girls on the front row, he was just Dad. 82 years ago, Mrs. Harry Sugg Sr. came home to her parents in Memphis, Tennessee to give birth to Harry. After recovering, she returned to Panama, where her husband worked for the Ford Motor Company. Harry's father was born in 1893, the eighth of 12 children, raised on a farm with only an eighth grade education. He was 47 years old by the time Harry, his first and only child, was born. And his goal for Harry was to get a high school diploma. Because of his dad's work throughout the Central and South America with Ford Motor Company, Harry lived in Panama and Cuba by the time he was 9 years old. He even learned the Cuban national anthem before he knew the Star-Spangled Banner. The family moved to New Jersey when Harry was 9, where he attended an all-boys high school. There he had daily chapel, and he wore a jacket and a tie to every class. The temperature in the classroom had to be above 90 degrees, and then and only then could he take the jacket off, but they could never take their tie off. These values and this upbringing instilled in him what has helped him and made him the disciplined man and what he needed for his future. During his growing up years, he shoveled snow in the winters in New Jersey, and he trained Tennessee walking horses on his grandfather's farm. In the summers in Mississippi, his Uncle Sonny was a crop duster, and he taught Harry to fly, and Harry received his pilot's license before he learned how to drive. Harry was a Boy Scout, and when he moved to the Northeast and became an explorer, he received his Silver Award at 17, and that's the equivalent of the Eagle Scout and Boy Scouts. He held the values of God, family, and country that he learned here. And he struggled to watch many of the changes that we have seen in our country in the last few years. He was known for carrying extra pocket-sized copies of the Constitution and handing them out to others when they weren't familiar with their Second Amendment rights. He would want everyone to know that today is Constitution Day, September 17th. In 1787, when the final draft was signed by our founding fathers at the Constitutional Convention, there was no one more patriotic than he was. And I have here Exhibit A, what they sent out to us. Here he is wearing a very patriotic tie, and you would think this was perhaps a political convention or the 4th of July, but no, this was something at the Texas Stadium. The greatest compliment that he could give was to say that someone was a foxhole buddy. He would tell us, girls, you want him in a foxhole. And you knew that you had reached the top. Because of having severe asthma, he struggled in school. At a young age, he worked well with his hands, from model airplanes to car motors to cleaning and oiling his guns. He was never idle. Much to everyone's surprise, he graduated from high school and was accepted into college. Harry spent his first freshman year in Florida. For his second freshman year, he went to Abilene Christian. With Abilene being a quiet town, he and his best friend Robert Hillis and some of the guys would go out on Sunday afternoons and hunt rattlesnakes. They had a long pole to grab the snakes, and then they'd drop them in a canvas bag held by one of the unlucky guys. If this guy didn't get the short end of the stick, we're not sure who did. Holding the bag was no joke. When they had had enough, they caught enough snakes, they'd go back to the dorm, they'd lock the door and get on the top bunk, and then they'd let the snakes out on the floor. The snakes couldn't get any traction on the tile floor, and somehow the guys thought this was great fun. Some things never change with college boys. When he had his motorcycle and the front end of his Corvette that he was fixing in his dorm room, his roommate decided to find other accommodations. Harry never understood why. He was accepted into the Naval Air Cadet program to fly jets on and off the carriers, but he chose not to go because it was a 5-year program, and he thought he would be too old at 25 when he graduated. Later, when his letter of acceptance to dental school came, he truly thought it was a mistake, but he chose not to say anything in case they changed their mind. He sweated every test the first 2 years, but really excelled when it came to the clinical part of dental school. He loved working with his hands. After graduation, he stayed on for a year residency program with the VA in Memphis, knowing he had lots to learn. He and a friend looked over the country, and he picked Dallas as the most ideal place to build a practice, and we're very glad he did. Without knowing a soul here, he built his practice based on pain control and availability. Dr. Sugg's practiced for 53 years. He believed his mission was right here in South Dallas. Several pastors came to him 30 years ago to thank him for staying in Oak Cliff and providing care to the community here. It's safe to say that there was no one that loved being a dentist more than Dr. Sugg. Dentistry was not just a job for him. It was his hobby, and it was his ministry. In his free time, he enjoyed poring over dental articles and learning new techniques to provide better care. He was not a golfer or a hunter. He might sound boring, but he was anything but that. He was known for phrases like, "Girls, act like you're in a hurry." If there was a $10,000 reward, do you think we could get the job done? Sleep fast. We've got a lot to do tomorrow. I can hear him saying all those. The only thing he liked better than being a dentist was being a dad to Laura and Jacqueline. If anyone ever lived to work, it was Harry. And the hardest thing over the last year was that he could not do what he loved. The last few months were the most challenging of all, but having friends come alongside us during this time has made it bearable. He once heard how Billy Graham had said, "One day you'll hear that I have died. Don't believe a word of it. I shall be more alive than I am now. I will have just changed my address. I will have gone home into the presence of God." And that's exactly what I have done. And as Mel and I looked over this, we realized that Carrie hadn't been mentioned at all because she wrote it. So true to form, she didn't mention anything about herself. And so the girls helped me with a little homework. And we found out that Harry met Carrie when she was working for him. And he fell in love with her when he saw her clean up throw up from a patient and comfort them. The guy that interviewed Carrie for the job called his dad immediately and said, "Harry, I just met the girl you're going to marry." They were married 11 months later in Dallas, Texas. Both of the girls were born here in Dallas. We just so admire Carrie. We admire her dedication to Harry. We admire her dedication to her family and to his practice, which is what he loved. She was always smiling, always joyful, and always very interested in the people that came there. So we love you guys, and the Lord will comfort you and bring you through this. Y'all are amazing people, a wonderful family. We love you and Dr. Suggs. Thank you.